Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, and I believe we have Ellen DePlacido on the phone. Ellen, you there?
I'm here, Mike. I'm
Hey,
waiting.
wonderful, wonderful. Hey, last week we talked about, starting seedlings indoors, and we went through all the rituals of doing that. Okay, the importance of good light, the good supplemental light, excuse me, and some good soil growing medium of some sort, and some good temperatures, and the importance of moisture, etc., and not getting things overwatered. And by now you should have an idea of where you need to go to create good, healthy transplants. And so now that we're there, we got to talk about this transition to the outdoors, because inside you have this nice protective environment, but outside it's a little bit different. Okay, as soon as you put those things in the ground, you're not going to bring them back into the house at night. So you got to have them prepared. It's just like you wouldn't take a newborn to the beach, okay, and just 2 weeks after they were born and expose them to all the elements in the sun there. So we're going to divide this into two different sections: cool weather crops and warm weather crops. Cool weather crops obviously are supposed to tolerate temperatures that are a little bit lower, and you're probably not going to put them out into your garden until you get to the point where we're about a week or 10 days, okay, from our last frost, before our last frost of the spring. These cool weather crops, okay, if we acclimate them right, should be able to tolerate that adjustment. And if they get frosted on lightly, it should be okay. And when we talk about, doing this here in Erie County, okay, we're looking at probably somewhere around the 1st of May, give or take a little bit. Some of us should live at higher elevations, and some of us live in frost pockets. So you got to be prepared for that, okay? You know what the temperatures are in your little microclimate where your garden is. With warmer weather crops, it's, again, there's quite a bit of variability, okay, within Erie County. But you're probably not going to want to put your warm weather crops into the ground until a couple of weeks after the last frost of spring, because you want the soil temperature and the nighttime temperatures to warm up. You want to get that soil temperature up around 50 degrees Fahrenheit before you put these transplants in the ground. Now, Ellen, how do we go about preparing these plants for this transition from the nice, cozy environment of inside, okay, to the harsh world outside? There's a method to this, isn't there?
Right. And that method actually has a name. It's called hardening off. In other words, we're going to make these plants hard and hearty, and we're going to get them used to the outside weather conditions. So there's really a process for your cool weather crops, and there's another process for your warm weather crops. So what you want to do is make sure that your daytime temperatures, when you start hardening off your cooler weather crops, is about above 40 degrees. And this is going to take about a 6-day process. Your first day, you're going to take that cool weather crop outside for about 3 hours and leave it in the shade. And the second day, you can leave that plant in the shade for about 6 hours. Then you would move on to step B, and you would take that crop back out into some filtered sun the first day for 3 hours, and then again the next day in the filtered sun another 6 hours. And finally, your last 2 days, you're going to take that cool weather crop outside, leave it in full sun the first day for 3 hours, the second day for 6 hours. And basically, the process is the same for warm weather crops. Yep.
Yep. Sounds good.
Oh, okay. But this time, before you take the warm weather crops out, you want to make sure that the temperature is above 55 degrees. So there's a 15-degree difference there, but you're going to use the same process for your warm weather crops. Is that right, Mike? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. But I just wanted to let everybody know that this whole process of hardening off, if you look it up in the literature, there's a lot of different variables here. But what we've
Yeah.
tried to do is to, sift this down a little bit to make it a little bit more understandable and easy to remember. I didn't want to drag a process out for, a week and a half, even though some of the books talk about that. I've used something like this and have been very successful at it. So you
Okay.
can, this 2 days of the shade, 2 days of the filter light, 2 days of the full sun for both the cool weather and the warm weather crops, I think works well. I think it'll serve you well. But the important thing to do is to look at your plants after they've been out.
Mhm.
Because if you have a day that's a little bit windier than others, maybe that's going to have you rethink a little bit, maybe back off a little bit,
Mhm.
and start over a little bit, maybe prolong the process for a day or two. But
Mhm.
those are the things you just got to watch out for. We tried to give you a good, program in a nutshell here that you can remember. Okay.
Mhm.
Then when you get around to planting your crops outside, you know, what you want to do is if you can put your seedlings in the ground on a cloudy day, that is great. But
Mhm. Yeah.
you don't always have that choice. Okay, and if you can't do that, if you could plant them later in the day so that they can get acclimated overnight a little bit better, that's fine. But if you have to put them in there on a sunny day, you got to do what you got to do, is what I always say when it comes down to that. And when you take that transplant out of that pot, if it seems to be a little bit of root bound, if the roots are going into a circular pattern, put your thumbs on the bottom of that ball of soil and break that stuff apart a little bit. And don't be afraid to be aggressive. Okay, and the plants will adjust. Okay? You got
Yeah.
to get that growth pattern going in an outward direction, so they search for the nutrients and the moisture throughout, not just kind of continually wrap in a circle. I guess, and the other thing you want to kind of keep in mind is that, at that time of transplanting, you might want to give them a little bit of fertilizer. I would like to use a liquid fertilizer that I mix at half strength, and then
Mhm.
I put a little bit of a protective collar around some of these cool weather crops in particular to protect the plants against the cutworms. I simply take a 3 to 4 inch square of newspaper, cut halfway into the center, and put a couple of small cuts so that I can put it around the stem of the plant. Put that on the top of the soil and put a little soil over the edges of it. That'll keep that cutworm from attacking those plants. And Ellen, I think that gives everybody a good idea of moving those seedlings
Right.
into the garden. And I think we've used up our
Right.
time for today. So
Okay.
we'll be back with you next time. Thank you now.
All right.
Bye bye.
Uh-huh.